name is John Meyer. I'm one of the senior partners at Foster Global. We're a global immigration law firm located in Houston, Texas, and we have offices worldwide. Specifically, we have an office here in Ho Chi Minh City. Our firm focuses on U.S. and global immigration. I happen to lead our investor practice, and I deal with EB-5 as well as non-immigrant visas like L1, E2, as well as the immigrant process, EB-1C, for those people who want to set up their own business in the United States. An L1 visa is an intra-company transfer visa. That allows a person who's worked at a foreign company, so for instance, a Vietnamese company, one of the last 3 years as an executive manager or specialized knowledge, that person can transfer to a related U.S. company. The relationship needs to be a corporate relationship. For instance, the Vietnamese company owns a U.S. company. For a new office, it allows a person to go and work there for 1 year without having any business, any clients, any employees. But after that 1 year, to get an extension, you would have to show operations and employees. If you're working as an executive or manager, you probably need to show 5 to 6 employees and maybe at least 1 manager or professional employee. The L1A, which is for executives or managers, an executive is a person who supervises managers, and a manager is a person who supervises professionals. The L1A can be issued for up to 7 years. So if you've got the first year as a new office, that's 1 year, and then you would get 3 2-year extensions, so totaling 7 years. The L1B visa is limited to specialized knowledge employees. Again, those are employees who have a special understanding about a process or procedure with the foreign company are going to be transferred to the U.S. company. Those visas are limited to a total of 5 years. So if you came in on a new office in an L1B, you would get the visa extended twice for 2 more years each, a total of 5 years. So the question is, can you go to the U.S. and open up a brand new office? The answer is yes. That's one of the real benefits with the L1A visa, is that an executive or manager who's worked for the foreign company one of the last 3 years as an executive or manager can transfer to the U.S. and start a brand new office. Basically, they'd need to go ahead and the U.S. company would set up the business, open a bank account, have some money in the bank account to be able to start up operations. You would need a commercial office lease where you're going to be operating the business from. You can't do it from your house. You would also need to have a very detailed business plan showing what you're going to do in the United States and some financial projections for at least 5 years. Another big advantage of the L1A new office is that the company doesn't need to have any employees. It doesn't need to have any clients, any customers. Basically, you can come and start a brand new business with only the executive as the employee to start out. However, at the end of that 1 year, it'll be very important for the business to be able to show growth. That's growth in operations as well as growth in the number of employees. If the person who gets transferred to the U.S. is an executive, then you need to have at least 1 managerial employee supervised by the executive and maybe 4 or 5 other employees. So the companies, the Vietnamese company and the U.S. company have to have a corporate relationship. A corporate relationship is defined as parent subsidiary, or the same exact group of shareholders owning the same exact percentages, or the third option is 1 shareholder who owns 51% or more of the business. However, what's very interesting, and I think a big advantage for Vietnamese clients, is that the purpose of the Vietnam company, let's say the Vietnam company makes shoes, the U.S. company that's related to that Vietnam company doesn't have to make shoes. It can go into any kind of business or industry it wants. So if the Vietnam company made shoes, the U.S. company could be, for instance, a restaurant, or it could be a gas station or a convenience store. The key is operations in the United States and a business that's going to generate plenty of U.S. employees. Another advantage of the L1 process is there is not necessarily any revenue targets. So for instance, the US company, which is where the people are going to transfer to, again, there's a Vietnamese company, the people who worked there one of the last 3 years are going to transfer to the US company. That US company really doesn't have to necessarily show a profit after the first year. It needs to show operations, and most importantly, it needs to show that it has employees. Again, if the person who's being transferred is an executive, you need to have a managerial employee and at least 4 or 5 employees below that manager. If the employee gets transferred as a professional or a manager supervising professionals, then the employees in the US should be professional employees with university degrees. The L1 visa is for the principal beneficiary, the person who's worked for the Vietnamese company and is going to work and manage or supervise the US company. There are dependent visas, which are for the dependent spouse and the minor children who are single under the age of 21. The spouse and the minor children get the L2 visa. The dependent spouse is eligible to apply for a work authorization that would allow he or she to work anywhere they'd like, and the children are eligible to go ahead and attend public or private school in the United States. In order to qualify for an L1, again, the executive or manager needs to be working for a Vietnamese company, and I think that Vietnamese company needs to be of a certain size. We usually recommend that it has operations for at least 1 year or more, that it has 20 or more employees on the payroll, and preferably a fairly well-defined organizational structure. So for instance, if there's an executive who supervises managers, the managers each supervise supervisors, and the supervisors supervise employees. If that's the case, and that's the first analysis that needs to be done, then the executive can be transferred to the United States. If it's a new operation, a new office, the visa will be issued for 1 year. At the end of the 1 year, we need to go ahead and show that there are operations and there are plenty of employees. So the type of business in the United States should be a business that requires lots of employees. You want to have a manager, you want to have 4 or 5 other employees who are supervised by the manager. One of the real benefits of the L1A is the EB1C immigrant process. The EB1C immigrant process only comes into play after the US company has been operational for at least 1 year. In my experience, typically these cases take 3 or 4 years because the US company needs to show a variety of things. It needs to show that it generates enough income to pay the salary of the executive in the United States. It needs to have a US federal tax return showing that ability to pay the salary. It needs to have a very detailed organizational structure, much like what I mentioned from Vietnam, where the executive supervises managers, managers supervise supervisors, and there are several employees. You probably want to have at least 10 or more employees of the US company before you start that EB1C immigrant process. But it's an excellent way to be able to immigrate to the United States via your own business. Finally, summarizing on the L1, I think it's very important for everybody to understand if you're going to use the L1 visa is a visa that requires an individual who really wants to supervise and run their own business in the United States. Many of you probably have heard about the EB5 process, and that has been a very good process for many people in Vietnam, but there's a very big distinction between EB5 and the L1 visa. EB5 is a passive process. It allows you to make an investment and kind of wait in Vietnam for your turn to come to be able to immigrate, whereas the L1, we need to show that you've been actively involved managing a Vietnamese company as an executive or manager. Again, that business is sufficiently large enough with operations and 20 or more employees, and then you're going to go as the executive and supervise that US operation and supervise the employees that you're hoping to generate over time, and then eventually be able to sponsor yourself for your green card. But you really have to understand that this is something that you're going to be involved in on a day-to-day basis, that is going to take a lot of your time, that it requires a very active participant in the L1 process. It's not passive in any sense of the term. You really need to be willing and able and want to go and run a U.S. business. One of the things that I would recommend is having some ability to speak English. I think it's fair for any consular officer to ask at the time you're applying for a visa, how much English do you speak to be able to run a business in the United States? If for some reason you don't speak much English, maybe the first person you want to hire is somebody who's going to help you manage the business, who does speak Vietnamese and English, and that might be a way to go ahead and show your ability to go ahead and run the business in the United States.